So, you're here to learn more about security as a service. This is going to be very collaborative. We want you guys to engage our experts up here. So the main goal and focus is to get you guys leaving this room excited about security, being able to go out to your clients and having some conversations around it, building some new pipeline. So the first part of it, we're going to go bring it back to the basics and just talk about what is security as a service, or SECaaS. I'm as inappropriate as anyone. I cannot say that. It just rolls off. It feels wrong. Then we're gonna address a couple different scenarios which you guys probably will run into. One is a reactive scenario where your client is calling you up saying, I'm actively being breached, I need help. The second scenario we're gonna run into is a proactive, consultative approach where you're gonna be reaching out to your clients and starting to engage practice around speaking towards security and helping them build a practice. And then we'll have some final thoughts. So defining SECaaS. So we probably all know what it is, what it means as a service. That's what we do every day, all day, right? But our clients probably don't, right? They're probably, when they think of security, they think of an insurance policy, and they're probably thinking, you know what, it's complicated, it's expensive. I'm gonna put this on the back burner because I think, Bhu, you mentioned it, I have a firewall. I'm protected. I don't have to worry about it right now. I'll worry about it next year when maybe budgets come up. They shouldn't have to worry about that anymore. We have providers. We have solutions like Level 3 Masergy, ViOS, Peak 10 that can provide the complexity at an affordable rate so they are protected. So we should be asking the questions, what is your security policy? What are you doing today? What would you like to do? We shouldn't ignore it. We shouldn't steer away from it. It should be a business conversation. We're going to just take a few minutes to identify some of the traits or risk tolerance our clients have, or what we're seeing out there today. So the first one the first one's called risk reduction, right? These are the folks that are out there today that will go out and buy everything. They're going to buy the software, the hardware, even probably put staff in place to make sure that their environment is secure. So when you reach out to them, they're probably going to be a little bit hesitant to even explore it. They may actually want to have a conversation with these guys to say, hey, where are my gaps? How am I not secure? We love these guys. Risk transference. These are the folks that say, hey, you know what? I know I want to be secure, but I don't want to do it. I want to hire someone else to do it for me. Those are the guys that we want to talk to. We want to talk to all of them, but we really want to talk to those guys. Risk acceptance. These are the folks that are gamblers. They're rolling the dice, right? They recognize that, hey, I could get breached. That's a reality. But it's really expensive, and maybe I don't want to pay that insurance policy right now, so I'm going to wait till I get breached and then deal with the cost after. It's not a really good business plan, right? And the last one is risk rejection. These are the folks that are just totally ignorant, head in the sand. Guess what? I'm not going to get breached. No one's looking at me. That's impossible. No one cares about my business. So the numbers don't lie. This is a game that you all can play with your clients. So if you're speaking with one of your clients and they're not convinced that they need to look or even consider security to protect their environment, pull up your favorite search engine, mine's Google, type in cybersecurity, cyber fraud, ransomware, malware, whatever you want to put in there, then hit search. Scroll to the bottom. Show them the amount of pages of articles, statistics, information of what's going on out there. They have to believe you. So here are a few that I thought were important for today. 14 million businesses this year alone, last 12 months, have been breached. IDC says damages are going to go upwards to $6 trillion in 2021, right? And this one we all should be excited about. The spending for cybersecurity will exceed $1 trillion from 2017 to, that's money in our pocket. So we're going to get into our first case study, all right? And here are the rules. I'm going to ask some questions, but I want you guys to ask questions. You guys are the folks that are in the field, talking to your clients. You need this knowledge from these guys. So the first case study is going to be about an actual attack that happened. I changed the name of the company. Well, there's no name of the company. I changed some of the dynamics just to kind of meet our needs today. But this actually happened. It happened about 6 months ago. Software company deals with voice recognition. They were hacked. They're not really sure what it was. They don't believe it's not pet yet, but it was basically a damaging, destructive virus that was attacking data, wiping it out completely. They had a team of people, purchased every possible tool you could imagine, and they still got breached. So to my esteemed guests, my panelists, I'm sure you've run into situations like this when someone has called you and said, I'm being attacked, I need help. What is your approach? What are the steps you take in order to help these folks resolve the issue?
First, get your resume ready. No, I'm just kidding. I have been a part of something like this. I worked for a healthcare company about 15 years ago, and we got breached ourselves. So it's interesting that it's a healthcare company. So think of somebody calling you up in terms of your healthcare. So you yourself in general probably have health insurance, and so if you get sick or injured, you're going to go to a doctor and get looked at, diagnosed, and they're going to prescribe something. They're going to do all their studies on you. If you don't have health care and you get sick or injured, what do? You self-diagnose, maybe you self-patch, you self-heal. So if somebody calls you up like this, they're basically going to run into the emergency room and say, help me. And so what do? I think you need to have a really good security partner in mind that can actually go out and do the forensics of looking at a breach and helping determine what was the cause of it, how do you remediate it, and then really put in a good incident response plan together after the fact. I mean, at this point, you're just, as a firm trying to help somebody out in this case, you really just want to try to limit the damage and the scope of what's happened to them. So who can actually go out there and look at what's happening, try to stop the damage, and then help with the remediation process? And really, beyond that, there's probably going to be lawsuits, there's going to be court cases, and people can actually sit on a court and actually tell, like, what happened here, how do I remediate? And it's tough. I mean, I've been in that situation, and for you to try to figure it out yourself, it's absolutely impossible. I mean, there is a team of people that can actually do that for you. So reach out to them and let them help that other individual out as well, and let them know that, hey, there's a team out there that can help you, but it's going to be costly. It's like going to the emergency room. It's going to be very costly because you didn't have a plan in place.
Yeah, and the thing I would say for you, if you get that phone call, is really to start asking some questions. How can I help you? That would be sort of the position I would take. What is it you're looking for from me? In addition to what he just mentioned about, forensics and all the incident response and all that kind of stuff. Really, first, how is it that you want me to help you? Because they're probably going to be tight-lipped and closed about what they really want to say. And you certainly don't want to probe too deeply because they're obviously in a very sensitive situation. So that's the very first thing I would do is ask, how can I help you? What is it specifically that you're looking for from me? Is it looking for incident response containment? Is it something you want me to help you understand your program? And when we talk about layered security, probably one of the biggest pieces here, if we're talking about ransomware or anything around the area of data destruction, is really, hey, now that you've gotten past the initial shock and now you're come in and brought your people and your experts to do forensic analysis, understand how it happened, now how do you actually build a program to build a layered security approach? So business continuity, part of that includes disaster recovery, and it doesn't just mean you have a backup program, it means you actually test that backup program so that you know where your data lives and you can restore that critical data and not be susceptible to these type of things in the future.
Definitely what's been said. You've got to stop the bleeding, you've got to identify where your vulnerability is, where it's happening to you now, but also having that partner that you can go to because they're going to be emotional, and the partner, the expert that you bring in, one of us potentially, has the opportunity to come in and put logical thought to it and take the emotional side out of it.
Okay.
I have a question regarding cyber insurance. If a company buys cyber insurance, have you ever seen cyber insurance paid off to a company that's been breached, any one of you three?
I know that service exists. I've never seen the actual payoff, no, or what the amount is and how much you insure. But I know those companies out there exist for that very reason.
Yeah, and I have seen companies pay off, but I won't talk too much about it.
And the payoff is minimal because it can't take into account the brand impact, the customer loyalty concerns, and those other impacts that'll have far greater reaching value than any insurance policy.
And I'm sure these, when you get in business with these folks, the contract says limited liability, right? Everyone wants unlimited liability. Nobody's ever going to sign that. Just for that reason alone, is that the impact's going to be way too much. All right, so you've run through these breaches, and this is going to be a hypothetical question. In your opinion, what you've seen, how long does it take to fix, to resolve? And it could go through the gamut, but what are your thoughts on that? Explain what some of the complexities can come into play.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, 300 employees, remote locations, I mean, it could take a while. And a lot of times in situations like this, there's a whole team of people that are going out and looking for everything. And so when you've got remote offices, that can infiltrate into, if something was breached and the offices are interconnected, then that malware, let's just call it in this case, can spread throughout the other companies, other departments. And so it can take a long time. I mean, it varies. There's no one quick answer for all that, whether it's a server that got attacked. And I think the business continuity, disaster recovery thing is very big because people don't tie security and disaster recovery into one thing, but they're so tied closely together, especially in ransomware, where a lot of healthcare companies are ransomware attacked. And just a quick thing on it, why is ransomware so big these days? And I kind of just looked at a lot of the analytics and the studies behind it. The reason I believe it's so big is when people steal your healthcare or payment card information, they'll put that on the dark web, and there's buyers out there looking for that stuff. And that could take a long time. People think when people breach companies that it's like a movie where somebody's in the basement, they got the hoodie on, and it happens like overnight. It does not. It takes months and months and months of reconnaissance and people looking at your network and probing and just seeing one little thing if it works or not so they're not detected. It takes a long time. So if you have a ransomware attack, it can happen very quickly, and they can demand money from you right away, so the ROI is very quick. It's a business. Hacking is completely a business. There's people paid to do that out there. There's governments out there that are paying hackers out there to do that. I know I diverted from your question a little bit, but just think about the impact and how quickly there's a lot of money in hacking, and that's why people do it. But to answer your question, it can take a long time. I mean, we have professional service teams that actually go out and do a lot of remediation work after and do incident response. So depending on the size and the scope of it, I'm not involved in doing a day-to-day basis, but months really.
Yeah, and from my perspective, the thing you'll always hear me and Level 3 talking about is definitely layered security. I mean, that's a core theme, and the reason that's important is because you have to understand where your exposure is. So responding to a breach is one area, but the reason I want to talk to you about layered security is that at every one of those layers, without going into a bunch of nuts and bolts, you have an opportunity to sell a service. So certainly we talk about containing the breach, responding to it. That could be months to years. If we think about Target, I think they have to go through 20 years of additional audits that they have to pay for just to show that they still have controls in place. Those controls are firewalls. Those controls are all kinds of solutions that you guys can sell from us. So really, when you're thinking about how to approach a customer and selling security services and you're talking about breaches or any of this kind of stuff, breaches is always a sensitive conversation. I would never lead with, have you been breached? I've seen salespeople do that, and certainly as someone who used to advise CSO staff and sitting next to a CSO, I think it's the last thing I ever want to hear from you coming in and talking to me. Have I been breached? That's asking me, is my laundry dirty, right? All that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to tell you the answer. So really, I want to know more about how do you understand my business and the areas where I'm trying to focus on in making my program more effective.
And also the recovery process from that, you can't focus just on that because it can also be a distraction and other incidents be occurring at that same time. So it takes that ever vigilant set of skills that a lot of companies are challenged to be able to specialize in because it's not their core focus. And that's where we can bring a model that helps them in that vein.
So talking about incident response, can you tell us a little bit about the having a retainer or not having a retainer versus what the typical incident response costs? I know this is a range, but can you give us a range on what that looks like?
I'll take a quick stab at it, and I say this very respectfully, but especially in this case, incident response, you really do get what you pay for. When you're talking about a retainer and you're talking about somebody that's going to come in and analyze, down to a bit level on a hard drive what happened, as well as the network forensics and all that kind of stuff, you need deep expertise. And so, the cheaper guys, we can start at $200 an hour and go all the way up to $450, $500. I'm sure we've seen higher. And then retainers vary across the board. You can have retainers that go from 24 hours, will be on site, all the way up to 3 days. How it depends on the risk tolerance, kind of in the beginning that we talked about. So it's really a risk decision. And how often do you think that you would be breached?
Yeah, every quote I do, I put incident response and forensics on it. And I explain to them and I validate why they need this. And they never turn it down, because if you have a security team behind you that says, if you get breached or you get attacked or you're just concerned about something, you have a retainer for X amount of hours a month that you get. And then, so you have people there at the ready who are QSAs. They're trained to look at all this stuff. And the prices can vary. Ours I think is very reasonable. Compared to what the rest of the cost of a service could be like. But every quote, it comes almost mandatory. And once you explain the rationale behind it, what we're all talking about here today is, why don't you have something like that? And everyone takes it.
And since you brought that up, one of the other things I've seen as well that you can do with that retainer is potentially, depending on who the provider is, they may use that not only just for incident response, but maybe some tabletop training exercises, right, to test your team's ability to respond to incidents before you have to have a breach. Very critical. Yeah.
Once you remediate, whatever happened, do you have real-time statistics? Are you watching the network after that to see that they're not getting breached again? I get that you're doing the incident when it happens, but what about after that? Because now I'm scared to death.
That's a great question, and it's really takes it to what we were talking about. It's not just a point in time type of snapshot. You've got to have that ongoing, and that's where you have the opportunity to bring in the discussion to them of what do you do going beyond that. You can't just put a Band-Aid on it and fix this one thing. Bringing an opportunity up where you have that managed service going forward, because you need that vigilance 24/7. It's not going away. It's not a set it and forget it tool that you can put out there, and there's no security silver bullet. So you have to have that plan in place on how you're going to respond, but you have to have that constant detection going on, because the prevention methods have been proven to fail. Otherwise, the year of the breach every year is surpassing the previous.
So I love horses, but I will say there's a horse on the ground that I'll keep beating, right? And I'm always going to talk about a program. So certainly we offer a service where we are absolutely watching the network traffic as one component, right? Whether you're talking more bad actors, whether you have data leaving your environment that you don't know about, whether it's going to bad places you don't know about, that's one element in terms of ongoing management. But when I talk about a program, let's talk about Equifax for an instance right now, and let's just talk about the CEO who testified to Congress just a few days ago, and he was very clear about the fact that they had a patch that was missing, on a technical patch that was missing, that they knew about, and then they knew about it again, but they didn't do anything about it. And that's about a program, right? That's really about, hey, how holistic are you looking at your environment? How is the function of that program working in terms of feedback loop, in terms of understanding how to prioritize where to address your time and effort? Because like we started talking about, short resources, whether it's dollars or whether it's people, how do they figure out where to focus their time and effort? The only way that, in my mind, you can do that is by having a program to understand where your risk is and then start building the right controls and put them in place. And if we have a breach, there was some control that was missed, and in this case, it was something as simple as a patch. And I'm sure each of us sees just about every time, it is something that fundamental, something very basic. They bought a whole bunch of really cool late generation tools. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on the latest tools, and they forgot the basics, or they stopped paying attention to the basics. And that's where, in my mind, we see a lot of the exposures happening.
Excellent. So in your expert opinion, and this is the Captain Obvious question, right? How much does it cost somebody once they're being breached? Millions, thousands? I mean, again, that's probably seem very difficult to figure out, being fictitious, but how much would something like this cost after the fact?
This particular scenario?
Or just any scenario, but if you can do this one, it'd be great.
At least hundreds of thousands of dollars, up to millions. And then let's again look at Equifax, and I'm only talking public stuff. The CEO, the CIO, and the CSO, their jobs, right? And I'm not saying this so you go out and talk with fear to your customers, but this is the absolute reality. Now, if you have a good program and you actually as the C-level, understand where your gaps are, and you can prove that to auditors or FBI or whomever is going to come in and start talking to you after the fact, then you have more of a defense. Hey, we did the best that we could. But if you're going to come out in front of Congress and say, whoops, we didn't do something very basic, that's, you've lost brand damage. It's really immeasurable in my mind.
Question?
Yeah, so is there a way to do an ROI with the customer before the sale?
I think that's where security and disaster recovery are very closely, tightly knit, because what you're basically saying is, what's the cost of downtime if you lose your production environment? And if they've got a really good accounting and finance department, they should be able to know and tell you, or give you a ballpark and say, if my production goes down, do I have a disaster recovery or business continuity plan to get my secondary recovery site up and going? So I should be able to validate and quantify, minutes, hours of what the cost of downtime is per application or per service that I'm doing to my end customer. So they should be able to validate that, and then from there, that's when you talk to them. And what he said was right on point. If there's not a security awareness program that a CISO puts in place, we might be using a lot of acronyms there, so just raise your hand if we. CISO just stands for Chief Information Security Officer. If there's not one of those people in place to develop these programs, they should be a part of that conversation too.
That's the guy I call the fall guy, right?
We had one question in the back, then I got to move on to the next one.
Can you each comment if you offer protection services and if you use a couple of advantages, why would you choose?
Sure, I'll start. We certainly do offer detection services. One of the reasons that we feel that we do such a good job at it is because a lot of it is our own intellectual property. If you think of even the best of breed solutions out there, if you or the customers can go and buy those, procure those, and put them in, so can the threat actors. They've got them in their labs, they're hacking them. That's why the 0 days are so damaging, because nobody knows about them. They find out, they're not going to publicly disclose them, they're going to use them to their advantage. That's one of the reasons where we have an advantage over.
I was waiting for you to finish your we were actually having this conversation before. We do as well, definitely within our facilities, our data centers, and our cloud. And if you're talking about somebody that's on-prem, do we offer that as well? Yeah, we do. We're agnostic to whatever they use. What I will say is this. That's like me saying just putting a firewall in place is going to solve your security problems. It absolutely will not. Unless you have a full stack awareness of what's going on, and I'm talking firewall, intrusion detection, WAF, log monitoring, and I have access to your change management. So for example, if your administrators go and open up a port to a new web server that they loaded and I don't know about it, and I'm looking at your IDS, and I go, oh my God, there's these alarms going off, there's somebody else attacking you, and you're like, no, we did this. And so unless somebody has a really good full stack awareness of what you're doing from a security perspective, then there's not a lot of value that I could add to you besides you opened a port and you knew it, but I didn't know about it. So if I can get full stack awareness and I can really add value to a customer. So that's what we really try to pitch, is that's really the service part about it.
Yeah, and for me, again, back to layered security, right? We talk about detection as one area. It's a set of controls within detection. There's also prevention, and then there's a response. And so we've been talking about all this. Now, I like to keep it hopefully simple for you to be able to understand where to put certain solutions. So certainly, we as Level 3 offer detection capabilities. We offer response capabilities and prevention. Around detection, we offer the ability. In fact, we had a great case study in Southern California where a very large organization already had a whole bunch of exotic technologies deployed, and with our threat intelligence product, which is completely passive analysis of their network traffic, and again, like I talked about, our global visibility, they were surprised what we were able to show them, because we're the outside looking in perspective, and we're well beyond what they can look at from their edge or they can consume from any of the threat intelligence products. Around prevention, we have a whole global set of services that we can deploy that are deployed in in gateways across the globe. In our super pop locations, so massive redundancy, high peering capacity, and the idea there is to be able to embed detection, prevention, and response capabilities within the network and a carrier agnostic service as well.
When you guys are on the front end of all this, do you have to put in some type of professional services to try to kind of, whether you're interfacing with the chief security officer or whoever that is, to kind of figure out what you really do need to kind of lock down and prevent, and then how do you set that service up beyond that, or is it all baked into your as-a-service pricing?
Go ahead.
For us, it's either or. You know, we can do it without professional services, or we can rope in professional services. That's why I mentioned, you know, we have a whole team of solution architects, because if it's not going to include professional services, we want to go through and help you go through. You don't have to do any of this part, right? Just bring us to the conversation. Help you go through the requirements gathering to really understand what are the objectives. What does the architecture look like today? Where do they want to go? That kind of stuff. That's what we can help with. And certainly we can wrap in professional services. But if it's just a service that they want to consume from us, we're going to bring upfront folks to help understand their architecture at a deep level, seasoned experts, right, to really understand it and then bring it in. So that's a pre-sales function that we can give to you.
We have a similar approach. We have a professional services arm that can assist with that. But without that, it's really using the architects to help understand where the traffic flow is, because you're only as good as your weakest link. And if you don't have visibility into all aspects of what's happening in the network, you're vulnerable.
I was going to say ours is very similar to that one, where we would engage our professional service teams to actually go out and do some type of assessment, whether that's a vulnerability, a security assessment. We need to have some level of knowledge of how your network and your applications are laid out, how the communication goes back and forth, and so we would engage our professional services team on that.
One more question.
So, if I'm a CISO at an enterprise, I have lots of options from the equipment perspective, managed security people, and services. So, my question really would be, how are you different than all the other 50 people that I could talk to? I can't talk to all 50. What's your secret sauce? What differentiates you? That's the question we get asked. Why bring Masergy, and why use level 3, why use data center? So can you?
Since you mentioned Masergy, you want to go first? First on the list?
The real differentiator, in our opinion, is that interaction with the people in our SOC, the service level offered. Again, there's no silver bullet that's out there. There's no appliance that's going to do it. And we have a very high level of tenure of the analysts in our SOC, and that allows for better security outcomes when they're dealing with us. There's not a churn factor, and that different voice they're talking to every time that isn't familiar with their network. It's understanding the client and having that rapport and that continuity with them to be able to take that emotion out and work with them on whatever their particular incident is.
Yeah, what I'd tell you what we do that's a little bit of a differentiator is we actually offer a CISO as a service. We offer CIO as a service. So while you may be a CISO and you have the understanding and the knowledge and how to put together an awareness program, we actually do that for a living with other companies. So we understand not only what it takes, but how to implement a program, how to educate the employees, how to bring awareness to all of them. So we understand top to bottom, not just, you know, we keep talking about this, don't put in a firewall in place, right? But that's an easy answer, but that's not the right answer. So we do this for a living on actually offering security as a service and CISO as a service. So we understand all the holistic approach when it comes to offering that kind of stuff.
And from level 3's perspective, you know, with our visibility, and that's the thing I always rest on, because we've built our entire security portfolio based on that real world visibility. So just like has been mentioned before, there is no silver bullet. We don't claim to do everything. There are certain areas where we play very well, and that's the area that we focus in, and that's really what differentiates us. And so we've embedded our security services into the network, and that being one, essentially we are anybody in the world, majority of anybody in the world is one hop away from us. So what that means is that when they consume our security services, and again, carrier agnostic, they can get that highest performance, low latency experience unmatched. And then our vantage point around threat intelligence, which informs the rest of our security products, is also something consumers can get from us, because they can reach it. They can not only get the service, but they can reach directly to our threat intelligence team to get a guidance on where they may want to go. And again, we don't claim to be everything, and there's areas, and that's what I love about being at level 3 in operations. We're very transparent about the areas that we don't play in.
Great. So moving on, we're going to go to a more likely situation of how do we engage our clients, right? We're going to get into that case study, but quickly, just I'm going to run through these because I'm running out of time. By the numbers, the most important one that I liked up here was 60% of all small companies suffer a cyber attack go out of business within 6 months. So those folks that think they're not going to be attacked, they have a firewall in place, that are going to roll the dice. You can't do that anymore, and I think they illustrated it's very expensive to resolve the issues and all the penalties and fines that go along with it.
Can I just add on to that real quick?
Yeah.
If you just Google the top type of companies, whether it's industry or vertical, that is most likely attacked or breached, you're going to get the healthcare and people that have credit card information. But in every one of those polls, the small companies is way up there. So you would think small companies are, security by obscurity, what we say, but no, they're always at the top of the list on once they get breached or attacked.
They're easy. They're easy targets. And this is a great statistic. This is money in our pocket, right? The industry is going to grow. People are going to get degrees. People are going to go and be security experts. We should be, that's our market share. All right. So to be secure or not to be secure? That is the question that we should be asking our clients. All right, so this next one, that is one of your clients? New York City, hacksaw on a bike. So this one, I had a actual case study, but I thought, you know what? We shouldn't really be thinking, we should be thinking about our own clients at this point. How do we go and talk to our clients? How do we start to engage our clients? How do we build a pipeline around that? So, looking at you folks, if you're in their shoes and they're Monday morning, they're ready to start talking security with their clients, their top 5 clients, what should they do? What are some tricks? What are some conversation starters? Give them some good questions and tools to take back out of here.
Number 1, don't say SECaaS.
Yes.
You might get thrown out. We were talking about this before this started. It's very daunting to talk about security and compliance to everyone because there's a lot of terms and acronyms and verbiage that a lot of people don't understand. So, it's intimidating for our sales force too to talk about it, and so they don't always talk about it. It's you may get into a situation where you can go at a high level and talk about security and compliance, and then they come back and they fire away at questions that are more difficult, and you have no level of understanding to go, can I support this? I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't know what they're saying. So I always keep it at a business level kind of conversation, so you can get a kind of a security engineer or some type of sales engineer involved, and just talk about what kind of programs do you have in place today. Do you have a CISO in place? Do you have somebody that can offer a security awareness program? Do you have any kind of incident response? So if you do get breached, is there a team out there that can help you? Those are very simple questions to ask, and they're yes and no type answers, right? Do you need help with that? Is there a firm out there that can do any kind of remediation work for you? Do you have a QSA? Do you fall into an audit? Do you have people doing pen testing, both physically and over the network for you guys? Those are things most people understand that, especially at an IT level, that can reply back to you on that. You got a question? Go ahead. Just go ahead. Yeah, I can talk for hours.
For larger companies that might already have a CISO in place, how do you pique their interest in bringing a supplier in and really trying to express some sort of value that we're going to bring to the table that they wouldn't have already thought of or weren't already hired to think of?
So I'm going to add to that too. So this is objection handling, right? This is, I have everything, why do I need you? How about even adding to that, what about the folks that have their head in the sand or say, I have a firewall, I'm good? So how?
So a CISO is good from a standpoint of actually maybe doing a self-assessment or an audit of their environment and then laying out a full-down security program and awareness for their employees. But that doesn't mean they're actually implementing anything. Who's actually writing the process and the controls in place? The CISO might be, they might not be, so they have to still outsource a lot of that stuff. The CISO is there to kind of make sure that security is top of mind to everyone. But then a lot of the programs that he or she may implement may require additional resources, and that's where you could bring in, some of the other suppliers.
And in that, I think probably all 3 of us offer something, a security assessment type of service. And for a CSO like that who thinks he has a fairly mature program, and someone who used to advise CSOs, there is nothing better than being able to have a third party come in who really is an expert that can come in and analyze from an objective perspective. How effective are my security controls? Now, I'm not just talking about doing a vulnerability assessment, but I'm talking about coming in and really understanding assessing my entire architecture, and then using that. The CSO can then use that as feedback to his board or whomever he reports to get more budget to buy more technology or to build more services around the technology to help that program be more effective.
Do you want to?
I was just going to add, having a CISO in place shows that they do have priority and they've given some value to that, which is actually a benefit to you to be able to engage in that conversation.
Yeah, let me just add on to that. One of the first questions I ask about that is whether they're a CISO or not is your board on board with you on security as a top of mind priority in your company or organization? If the answer is no, then it is much harder because they feel like security is not my problem, not my issue. If they do, then you know it's top of mind and that it should be culturally ingrained within their organization.
Yeah, and real quickly, I wanted to go back to what you asked about, how do you uncover opportunities and what questions do you ask? I mean, one of the things I always like to think about is strategy and helping have a conversation, back to the business conversation with my customer, whether it's a CSO, whether I'm talking to the director of IT, whomever it may be, what is their true strategy? Do they like to buy a bunch of equipment and have people that manage it? Do they have the people on staff that can manage it and keep it fine-tuned? Or are they looking to move away from that? Because level 3, we are definitely looking to disrupt the marketplace with our adaptive network security platform. We think that the future is, and we're getting validation by independent analysts, the future is moving away from premise-based equipment and being able to consume security services in the cloud, and that's what we offer. So it's just really a conversation around what is their direction, how do they like CapEx, like OpEx, what is their approach to information security in general?
So I talked to a customer that said that they just spent $15 million on, in-house security tools, and they had a full team. So would you recommend having a security assessment and, ask them who's writing the process and controls?
Yeah, let me just echo what was said earlier. It's always good to have a third party validate all that stuff, whether their process, their controls, their procedures, anything like that. It's common practice that if somebody comes in and does an assessment for an organization, that another QSA comes in and actually does the audit. So that kind of leaves a little delineation of you're not just, I've got controls in place for that as well.
And how much is an assessment?
It varies. It totally depends on the scope and what the customer is willing to allow the assessment to look like. 20,000 up to 100,000 or more.
A high tech is very expensive. A high tech is.
Yeah. And just to harp on that point a little bit more, a security assessment, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, but the reason that's important and the reason that a CSO or anybody you're talking to might appreciate that, especially for the customers that haven't deployed things and they think that they're not vulnerable or they think that they're not a risk or they don't have anything they want to protect, it is a way to feedback to the organization the validation of their assumptions about the money they spent and the controls that are in place, or uncover new vulnerabilities they never knew existed before. So to go on to the point earlier about a company that thinks, hey, I'm not at risk, I don't really need to put any security controls in place, and I think these folks have heard me talk about it before, God forbid that you believe that and that you're an enterprise that has servers sitting on the edge and you've got a whole bunch of bandwidth and you have somehow become part of a botnet that is now attacking another organization, and the FBI comes and knocks on your door as that business owner and says, you had no security program in place, you had all of this exposure and you did nothing about it, we've got a problem.
I came up through the telco space, and when I was selling phone systems, I could tell a customer, you've got enough trunk lines, okay? You've got 100 trunk lines, you don't need 200, even though I can sell you 200. I know your traffic patterns, I know everything about the way you do business. You don't need any more trucks. When it comes to security, let's say they go all in with you, all right, and you learn all about their business. Is there some point where you say, you've bought enough of my service, you're secure, I can sell you more, but you don't need to buy any more? And then do you ever tell them that? And do you ever give them any sort of guarantee that you're good, you don't need to buy any more?
I'll take it just as a quick stab, and again, that horse, I think his ribs are showing now, but it's about a program. And to me, and I'm sure my cohorts agree, information security is a life cycle, and it's an ongoing life cycle. It's plan, do, check, act, and keep repeating. Lather, rinse, repeat. And so what that means is that, yes, you may already have some good controls in place, and yes, maybe we've already sold you as much. That doesn't mean that we're the only provider, but you should continually be assessing that platform. You should be continually looking at the threat landscape. You should be continually informing your program about new threats that you need to address. And so from my perspective, there is something that is known as residual risk, and that means being able to have all the tools and technologies in place to be able to assess your environment as well as bring in third parties to understand where your gaps are and to get them down to an acceptable level so that you at least are informed about those risks and you can address them either with risk transference, with insurance, or just simply accepting the risk. But without getting, and that involves also tools and a framework, right, to really understand risk aside from IT security. And then from there, you can make the decisions at the board level about, hey, do we need to spend more money or have we gotten down to an acceptable level of risk? And the phrase I always use is there is something known as good enough security, and that's what we evangelize. There's not perfect security. And good enough security means you are informed and you understand where your gaps are, and you're willing to accept the risk associated with those gaps because you have compensating controls at other layers. But you can't do that without a good assessment, without a good program.
Question?
Are you Facebook live streaming us right now? Oh, okay.
What percentage of the assessments turn into a residual income stream that partners would get compensated on?
For me, I mean, the majority of them do. They either turn into additional services the customer wants to buy from us or additional controls that need to be put in place. Absolutely, to me, the security assessment is a great first start. We do a few different ones. With threat intelligence, we offer a free assessment for our customers. We'll look at their IP space and just see what that looks like.
What percentage at? What percentage would?
I would say it's at least above 60%.
I missed the question.
So once the assessment is done, how often does that lead to reoccurring residual compensation models for the agent?
Well, it depends on what the engagement is. If it's just I need a third-party assessment on something, that could be it, right? That could be like that's all I needed you for, fine. But I mean, if you have a really good rapport and you develop a really good relationship with them, it could lead to. I mean, it doesn't have to lead to just a security engagement. It could lead to cloud or some other kind of services that you have. You know, other professional services work. Like we do stuff in AWS. We do DevOps work. So it could lead to other things that don't just rely on security. But it's once you get them a little bit sticky to you and your services, it can lead to other things.
Do we get commission on that if you upsell them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes, of course, yeah.
How effective have you found the conversations, particularly in the SMB market, revolving around PCI, if, say public Wi-Fi, PCI violations, things like that, as an opener to security practices? Do you find that to be effective to try to talk to business managers or talking to CSOs? Let's downscale a little bit, right, into the smaller businesses. How effective are those operational components in entering that security conversation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the stat was put up there about smaller businesses and how often they're attacked. And I mean, that's again, it's easy to lead in security with a lot of, negative connotations out there, and so that's an easy thing. It's already top of mind for everyone else. And I think if you just have an adult professional conversation with them and say, let me understand where you are today with your security practice, a good question to ask everyone is, what's your security posture? And it's kind of a general question, but it lets you know where they stand and how they take security as an importance to their company or an organization. So if it is high, then obviously you talk about some of the services that you offer. But it's an easy conversation to have anyway. I'll tell you this: our CISO demanded for us in our company, whether we have an internal or external meeting, the first slide on any PowerPoint is a security awareness for both the internal and external employees. So when we go out and we do a QBR with someone, the first slide is could be like the Equifax, and it's not necessarily a fear thing. We just want to talk about it. You'd be surprised how easily everyone wants to talk about security and breaches, and it's a conversation starter. And they go, "Can you believe they may have gotten my stuff?" And like, "What are you doing about it? What are you doing about it?" Next thing you know, the conversation just grows to, "What are you doing today?" Not much. Can you help me out with that? So it's an easy conversation to have.
And if they're just addressing compliance, that's not necessarily solving the problem. That's the bare minimum. So you can always ask them, who do they have identifying, alerts, monitoring and managing those alerts, incident response. If they don't have the team in place, great opportunity for security as a service. Even in the most resourced companies, you've seen the breaches happening in the news. So it is out there, and it's a concern.
out in the press has been about $200 per record breached for all the costs, legal, credit monitoring and repair, reputation, advertising, et cetera. I have two questions. Do you accept that number? And two, would you have that conversation with a prospective client about how big that could be for them?
Well, I also used to be in the military, so I'm just going to evangelize. To me, I mean, it's about being a good network citizen, you know. And if you're attached to the internet, to me, certainly, so I accept the number. I think it's actually maybe a little bit lower, around 150-ish, somewhere in that area. But it's a fair number. It's a loose number. It's not easy to quantify, in my view. I know there's a lot of work that's been done around that. But in my mind, and you know, of course, my world is information security, so I'm passionate about it, right? But if you're attached to the internet, especially in this day and age, and oh, by the way, it's in the press today, we launched a DDoS attack against North Korea, right? So we can expect retribution, right? And that this is all public knowledge. So in my mind, whether you're a small, medium, or large organization and you're attached to the internet, I don't go about, you know, having a conversation around price per record. I talk about good hygiene. I talk about you being a good citizen, and are you going to be culpable and part of an attack, or, you know, potentially just crushed with ransomware and you're completely out of business as a small business because you didn't have a program in place. You didn't understand other gaps in your controls.
So we only have a couple minutes left. Start to think about how Intelisys can help you get more intelligent about this. Are there trainings that you want us to see from us? Tools? Get more detail? Okay. A what book?
That's actually a great idea.
Decoder, yeah.
Sure. It's called Google. So I want to leave off.
I just want to, I mean, I think that's a really good idea, that at least the most common acronyms they would run into, let's put something together about that.
Yeah, acronyms and then what they do, right? What does an IDS do? What does a WAF do? What you know? Why do I need one? And who needs one? And what's mandated? That the kind of information could be helpful.
I will. Do it. Do it now. So with a couple minutes left, final thoughts. What do you guys want to convey to these folks before we get up and go and have them come talk to you over a drink?
How many people connected to the public Wi-Fi in the hotel that doesn't have a password? That was just a joke, but it really isn't. Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that, you know, are part of your community that will help you and educate you on trying to get the conversation started and moving along. So we're here to help. It can be a difficult conversation, but as I pointed out, it can be an easy conversation. Your next meeting with your next client, just do it. Just put up Google whatever the latest malware attack is, and just put that up there as a first slide and just talk about it and go, I thought this was really interesting. Security is really on our mind as a company. It's a big focus for ours, so we're asked to lead with it. And put it up there. I guarantee you they will talk about it. You'll have a conversation about it, and they can just grow from there. And you can talk about whatever else, you know, fosters from that.
I'd agree. It doesn't have to be intimidating for you. You know, don't be afraid to ask them about their security posture and what they're doing. And if they start getting into those acronyms that are concerning, say, hey, I'm just learning this myself, but I've got a partner. Knowing that you have resources like us up here, and Intelisys backing it, that can come out to them and speak about the specifics around it. But you can get into a great conversation with them and identify, you know, concerns for them, and turning it into a business strategy for them too, because it gives them an advantage.
I absolutely echo that. I mean, the things you guys have already been doing for years, right? Out understanding the business of your customer, that's the most fundamental thing you can do. What landscape are they playing in? Are they retail? Then you can kind of understand, okay, they're going to have these kind of considerations around security. Are they in healthcare? Okay, they're going to have these kind of considerations. But don't worry about, and definitely don't get bogged down in trying to talk to some propeller head, and I say that respectfully because I worked with plenty of them and I got a lot of respect for them, but they have a whole bunch of whiz-bang stuff they're going to talk about that's all noisy, and it's unnecessary to get in that conversation. Keep it at the business level, and when you need to get more technical and talk about more solutions, that's when you can bring us to the table. But just really understanding where the business is today, where they want to move, and then figuring out, okay, then what kind of security posture, what kind of controls do you need to put in place to help you move to that vision that you have.
Great. Well, thank you very much. This is the last session of the day. Get out.